Last time on Druid Briar, a tale of roots and ruin. Briar managed to gather 3 of the 16 cursed items he needs to break his hex: the Nature Rune, the Tome of Fire, and a clean Ranarr weed. He also managed to get himself into some, let's call them creative missteps. This time, Briar will lose his mind casting spells, stumble through some uncharted territories, and have awkward yet unforgettable conversations with some truly fascinating characters. So grab your favorite ethically sourced snack and join Briar as he awkwardly fumbles his way through Gielinor once again in search of those elusive cursed items. For those new here or those who conveniently forgot, Briar's curse has a lot of fine print. The first, no meat or animal byproducts, so no bacon, no cheese, no leather shoes. The second, no chopping plants unless he lovingly grew them himself. Third, all food must come from Briar's own hands. Farming, thieving, or drop scrounging. Grocery shopping is not an option. And finally, Briar needs to collect 16 specific items to lift the curse, which I'll kindly list in the description because memorizing that is a lot to ask. Our story picks up with Briar making his way to the mage training arena. His goal? Obtain the highly fashionable Infinity Boots. First stop, the Telekinetic Theater, where Briar had to solve tedious mazes so frustrating they made him want to pull his hair out. Next, the Creature Graveyard, a delightfully morbid room full of skeleton vibes and an aura that makes you question life's choices. Then, the Alchemist's Playground, where Briar learned that turning junk into gold is fun, until you realize that the only treasure here is existential dread. Finally, the Enchanting Chamber, basically Gielinor's version of arts and crafts, but with a lot more glowing orbs. After countless spells and what felt like an eternity, Briar finally earned enough points to buy the Infinity Boots. Looking good, Briar. You're one step closer to making Curse Chic a thing. Next, Briar ventured into the catacombs, armed with a steel scimitar? Why not the shiny mithril one in his bank? Well, that one's on me, the narrator. I'd like to say I was trying to challenge him, but the truth is, I just forgot it was there. So I'm sorry, Briar. With a slightly sharper weapon in hand, Briar bravely took on the hill giants, smiting them one by one to hone his combat skills, buried every bone as an offering to the gods, and started collecting totem pieces for the ultimate showdown with the shadowy demon Skotos. He's not quite ready for that battle yet, but when the time comes, let's just say, Skotos might need a therapist. Briar has also set his sights on a different challenge, a grand battle royale, to determine the best fighter in all of Gielinor. But first, he needs to prove himself worthy by building a reputation, so off he went, searching for people in need of help, or, more likely, people with problems big enough to ignore how bizarre Briar's vibe is. Will Briar's spellcasting mastery continue to grow? Can he survive his next encounter with questionable logic? And will he ever stop being sabotaged by his narrator? Tune in to find out. The first quest Briar embarked on was to save the grand city of Varrock from a demon so terrifyingly average that most people weren't even scared, just mildly inconvenienced. It all began with a visit to a gypsy in a tent, who ominously told Briar of the demons summoning outside the city walls. Briar, naturally skeptical of anyone who lives in a tent yet claims to know the fate of entire cities, decided to investigate. Next he spoke to a knight who was about as surprising as a salad at a vegan dinner party. This knight somehow failed to mention how he got his title, but Briar didn't ask, probably for the best. Then came the weird wizard in a tower, who looked like he hadn't slept or seen sunlight since the Third Age. This wizard handed Briar one of the keys for the demon-slaying weapon, likely after several cryptic riddles and an unhealthy amount of rambling about magical theory. Armed with his newfound weapon and a heavy dose of skepticism, Briar made his way to confront the demon. Despite his ominous introduction, the demon proved to be less terrifying hellspawn and more angry barbecue enthusiast. And slay the demon he did, with one epic strike, or let's be honest, several slightly less than epic ones. Briar saved Varrock from an apocalypse that was never really on anyone's calendar. Briar's next task was to help a squire rebuild a family sword belonging to a knight of Falador. The squire, desperate and clearly out of his depth, mentioned a scholar at Varrock Castle who might know more about restoring the sword. Enter Reldo, a man so engulfed in his books that he probably hadn't noticed the invention of pants with pockets. Weird, solitary, and brimming with trivia no one asked for, Reldo informed Briar about a dwarf in Remington who could rebuild the sword. So off Briar went, traveling south to meet this dwarf, a man of simple pleasures and very specific culinary demands. For the grand price of one red berry pie, the dwarf worked his magic, or in this case, his blacksmithing. With a belly full of pie and a hammer in hand, the dwarf reforged the sword, and thus the legendary weapon was restored, proving once and for all that dwarves will do anything for dessert. Next, Briar ventured to Goblin Village, where he was immediately roped into what can only be described as the most awkward fashion show in Gielinor's history. Two goblin generals, locked in a heated argument, forced Briar to decide which color their armor should be. Apparently, goblins take their fashion choices very seriously. Who knew? With zero design experience and absolutely no stake in the outcome, Briar reluctantly played the role of Gielinor's next top stylist. He sifted through a dazzling array of, well, two colors. After much debate and far more goblin drama than anyone needs in a lifetime, the generals finally settled on the default color that they started with. Because why make a decision when you can waste everyone's time instead? Briar left the village wondering if goblins had always been this indecisive, or if he'd just witnessed the birth of the world's most unnecessary trend-setting committee. Next, Briar found himself tangled up in a shady pirate scheme, helping smuggle illegal rum into Port Sarim, because nothing says heroic quest like breaking customs laws for a guy who probably hasn't bathed since the Second Age. With the rum delivered, the pirate revealed the location of his hidden treasure. Armed with a spade and an alarming lack of foresight, Briar dug it up, only to immediately be ambushed by an angry gardener. Next, Briar found himself sailing to a mansion shrouded in mystery, only to be thrust into a classic whodunit. A murder had taken place, and the only thing we knew for sure was that a killer had a fondness for playing games. Probably the most unsettling icebreaker ever. Briar, armed with nothing but his wits and a growing suspicion of everyone, began piecing together the clues. After interrogating a cast of eccentric suspects and poking around in places he definitely shouldn't have been, Briar finally confronted the killer in a bizarre mirror game. It was like a twisted version of hide and seek, except instead of fun, there was only existential dread. In the end, Briar uncovered the shocking truth. The so-called killer was actually just two weird kids with a flair for the dramatic. Their grand motive? They wanted to be movie stars. That's right. This whole elaborate ordeal was their audition tape. Briar left the mansion feeling confused, slightly annoyed, and vaguely impressed by their commitment to method acting. Now that Briar had finished playing the hero in a series of increasingly bizarre quests, he figured it was time for a gear upgrade, because why fight evil with a rusted spoon when you can at least have some decent armor, right? He grabbed an adamant sword and a mithril plate body from Varrock, feeling slightly more heroic with each piece of armor. Then, just to complete the look, he picked up some adamant pants from Al-Kharid. It wasn't the most glamorous outfit, but hey, at least it wasn't made from burlap anymore. Briar now felt ready to take on the world, or at least the goblins that hadn't already seen through his weak fashion choices. With his newfound gear, Briar's reputation in Gielinor was on the up and up. He was this close to being invited to participate in Gielinor's very own battle royale, Last Man Standing. Because naturally, the first thing Briar wanted to do after improving his wardrobe was to throw himself into a no-holds-bar, everyone-for-themselves gladiator match. But before he could sharpen his skills for this brutal competition, Briar knew he needed to level up, so off he went, grinding away, getting stronger, and maybe even realizing that his crystal weapon seed might just be a little more elusive than expected. After all, he wasn't exactly going to win any last man standing matches if he couldn't stand up without tripping over his own shoelaces. And that's going to wrap up this episode of Druid Briar, A Tale of Roots and Ruin. Briar managed to snag himself the Infinity Boots, got stronger by the minute, and even helped out some questionable individuals, because who doesn't love a little moral ambiguity, right? If you enjoyed this episode, please like, comment, and subscribe for more chaotic adventures. It's free, and hey, you can always change your mind later, so no pressure. Unless you're into that kind of thing. We're aiming for 100 subscribers by the end of the year, which, spoiler alert, is in 2 weeks. So if you haven't hit that subscribe button yet, what are you waiting for? An engraved invitation? Thanks again for watching, and I'll see you in the next episode, where Briar's misadventures continue. Who knows what kind of trouble he'll get into next? Honestly, I'm just here for the chaos.